She watched her sister take her last breath. Then she went home and started planning her wedding. She moved into her sister's house, slept in her sister's bed, and when the children cried for their mother, she smiled where nobody could see her. But what she did not plan for was what happened next. The dead do not always stay quiet. If this story already has your attention, you are exactly where you need to be. Subscribe to our channel and turn on your notifications. Sit tight. Do not go anywhere. This story is about to take you somewhere you will not forget. Now, let us go back to where it all started. To a house on Sycamore Lane. To a family that had no idea what was coming. The Caldwell house on Sycamore Lane was not the biggest house on the street. But the moment you walked through that front door, something happened to you. The noise of the world outside just stopped. The air felt warm and calm and safe. Like that house had its own heartbeat. And it did. Her name was Renee Caldwell. Renee was 34 years old, and she loved her life. Every morning she stood at the kitchen window in her old yellow robe while the coffee brewed and whispered the same prayer. Thank you for all of this. Thank you. She had a good husband, 2 beautiful children, a home that felt like peace. She had no idea that someone was watching that life, wanting it, planning to take it. And that someone was not a stranger. Tobias Caldwell loved his wife like she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Because she was. He ran his own logistics company and traveled Monday through Friday most weeks. It was the one thing about his life he wished he could change. But every time he came home, he came back fully. He would drop his bag, and Zoe would come running first. Always. He would catch her laughing every single time. Then Elijah would appear at the top of the stairs, pretending to be too cool to be excited. He was not fooling anyone. And then Renee, walking out slowly, wiping her hands on a dish towel, looking at him with that look that said everything. I missed you. I am glad you are back. This house is not the same without you. He would cross the room and hold her, like a man who knew exactly how lucky he was. Elijah was 15 and already becoming his father. Quiet, serious. Every night before he slept, he listened for the sound of his mother's slippers on the floor downstairs. The click of the kitchen light going off. Only when he heard those sounds would he close his eyes. As long as she was moving, everything was fine. Zoe was 13 and full of life. She sang in the shower. She danced in the kitchen. She argued with Elijah about everything and always got the last word. But her favorite place in the whole world was right next to her mother, falling asleep on the couch with her head in her mother's lap. She felt safest there. Bruno was the family dog, old and slow and loyal. But every single time Vivian walked through the front door, Bruno would get up quietly and leave the room. No barking, no growling, just a slow, quiet exit. Animals know things that people take too long to figure out. Vivian Foster was Renee's younger sister. Pretty, charming, always smiling at the right moment. She said all the right things to all the right people. But her eyes told a different story, especially when they followed Tobias across the room. Renee never noticed. When you love and trust someone completely, you do not look for knives. Especially when the knife is sitting across the dinner table, smiling at you. Those were the good days. The days when the house was full of noise and laughter. When Zoe sang and Elijah listened for his mother's slippers, and Bruno slept peacefully at the foot of the bed. Those days felt like they would last forever. They always do, right up until they do not. Vivian had been in love with Tobias Caldwell for 6 years. Not in a good way. In a dark, selfish way that did not care who got hurt. She had watched her sister and Tobias fall in love right in front of her at a church cookout in 2009, and something inside her had twisted ever since. For 6 years, she told herself lies. He deserves better than her. He deserves me. It was like a sickness. And it was getting worse. She found Miss Della on a Thursday in March. Nobody knew Miss Della's last name. She lived at the end of a dirt road 20 minutes outside of town in a house that sat too far back to be seen clearly. People talked about her in low voices. Vivian drove out alone, sat in her car for 10 minutes trying to talk herself out of it. Then she knocked. Miss Della opened the door before the second knock. Small, silver-haired, eyes that saw too much. Inside smelled like dirt and something bitter. Vivian sat at a small wooden table. "What do you want?" Miss Della asked. "I want my sister's husband, and I want her out of the way." Miss Della went to a shelf and came back with a small glass jar. Dark liquid inside that moved too slowly when tilted. 3 drops, she said, in something warm, something she drinks every day. "Will it?" "Do not ask me what it will do," Miss Della said quietly. "You already know what you want it to do. That is the only reason you are here." Vivian's hand was shaking when she reached for that jar. But she reached for it. Renee loved her morning coffee. Strong. 2 sugars. A little cream. Poured into the blue cup Zoe had painted for her 2 years ago. The one with the uneven flowers and the crooked letter M for Mama on the side. She drank from it every single morning. Vivian knew that. 2 weeks later Vivian came over on a Saturday morning. Said she was just passing by. Sat at the kitchen table laughing while Renee made breakfast. Then Renee stepped out to call the children. 60 seconds. That was all Vivian needed. She walked to the counter, picked up the blue cup, let 3 dark drops fall into the coffee, stirred it once, put it back exactly where it was. When Renee came back, Vivian was on her phone, smiling at nothing. Renee picked up her blue cup. Perfect. Vivian smiled. "I am glad," she said. The changes came slowly. A headache that would not leave. A tiredness no sleep could fix. Renee pushed through it the way strong women do. But the body does not care about your plans. By the 3rd week, she was losing weight. By the 4th, she could not get through a day without lying down. The doctors used words Tobias wrote down in a small notebook and looked up later. Alone. In his car. Where his children could not see his face. He sat next to her hospital bed one Tuesday night, holding both her hands. "You are going to be fine," he said. Renee reached up and touched his face. "Take care of my babies," she whispered. "Promise me." The sound that came out of Tobias in that quiet room had no name. It was the sound of a man feeling the ground disappear from under his feet. He pressed her hands to his face. "I promise. I promise. I promise." Renee Caldwell died on a Friday morning in April. She was 34 years old. Her blue cup sat on the kitchen counter at home. Cold. Untouched. Zoe found it 3 days later and cried in a way that no 13-year-old child should ever have to cry. At the funeral, Vivian wore black and cried the loudest. She held the children while they sobbed. She held Tobias while he shook. "That Vivian is something else," the church mothers whispered. What would that poor family do without her? Bruno did not come out of the bedroom the whole day. He lay at the foot of Zoe's bed with his head on his paws and did not move once. Grief makes people do things they would never normally do. It makes a man reach for anything warm, anything familiar, anything that reminds him of what he lost. Tobias Caldwell was that man, and Vivian had been waiting for it. She waited 3 months before coming around more. She brought food, listened to Tobias talk about Renee, let him cry, said all the right things. Renee was so lucky to have you. She would want you to be okay. She used Renee's own memory like a ladder to climb closer to her husband. And it worked. Because grief does not think clearly. 6 months after Renee died, Tobias told the children Vivian was moving in to help look after them while he traveled. Elijah looked at his father with eyes too serious for 15. "Dad, is that all she is going to be? Someone to look after us?" "For now," Tobias said quietly. Elijah heard those 2 words very clearly. That night he sat on the edge of his bed in the dark. For now. 2 words sitting in his stomach like a cold stone. Vivian moved in on a Sunday. She placed a framed photo on her dresser. Her and Renee as little girls. Renee laughing big and free. She put it there so anyone who saw it would think, what a devoted sister. Zoe saw it and felt sad. Elijah saw it and felt sick. Bruno sniffed along the bottom of the guest room door, then turned around and walked back to the hallway without a sound. He never went near that room again. The mask came off slowly, in small cracks. 2 weeks after moving in, Zoe knocked over her juice at dinner. An accident. But Vivian's face changed for one sharp second. Eyes cold, jaw tight, something ugly flashing across her face before the smile covered it back up. Tobias missed it completely, but Elijah saw it, and Zoe felt it even if she could not name it. She went quiet for the rest of dinner. Smaller. Like something inside her had decided to take up less space. The moment Tobias's car turned the corner on his next work trip, the smile dropped off Vivian's face completely. Elijah, trash out. Then sweep the garage. 6:45 in the morning. School in an hour. Zoe, both bathrooms before you leave. Neither child said a word. They had just met the real Vivian Foster. It got worse with every trip. The children cooked and cleaned and scrubbed. They came home from school and went straight to chores before eating. One evening Elijah came home shaking with hunger. A full pot of rice and stew on the stove. He lifted the lid. "That is not for you," Vivian said from the doorway. "Bread in the cupboard. 2 slices. 8 hours at school. 2 hours of football practice. 2 slices of bread." He sat alone at the kitchen table eating slowly, staring at the wall, thinking about his mother. Zoe stopped singing in the shower. Elijah noticed it one evening standing in the hallway. The house was wrong somehow. Then it hit him. Zoe. Zoe was not singing. She had not sung in weeks. He knocked on her door. She was sitting on her bed, knees to her chest, eyes dry in the way that comes after running out of tears. "I miss Mama," she said, her voice so small. Elijah sat beside her and put his arm around her. 2 children holding each other up in a house that used to overflow with light. When Tobias came home, everything went back to normal. That was the cruelest part. Good food. Warm house. Vivian smiling and gentle. "How are they?" he would ask. "Perfect," she would say. And over his shoulder she would look at the children with a smile that said one clear thing. "Say one word. Just try it." The children said nothing. They gave their father small, careful smiles and let him believe everything was fine. He had absolutely no idea. Patricia Moore had been teaching at Jefferson Middle and High School for 19 years. Warm heart, sharp eyes. The kind of teacher who noticed everything. When she handed Elijah back a 54% and watched him push it quietly to the bottom of his bag, without looking up, she knew something was badly wrong. She looked at Zoe sitting straight and still at her desk. The light in that little girl's eyes was dimmer now. She kept them after class. She pulled her chair close. Not teacher close. Person close. "Talk to me," she said simply. Silence. "Nobody is in trouble. I am asking because I care. Are you both okay?" "We are fine, Ms. Moore," Elijah said. "You are not fine," she said gently. "And I'm not going to pretend I cannot see that." Zoe's chin began to shake. "Baby," Ms. Moore said. "You can talk to me. I promise it is safe." And just like that, everything broke open. Zoe covered her face and cried. Deep and shaking and long overdue. "She does not feed us right. She makes us clean everything. She screams at us when Daddy is away. She said if I ever told anyone, she would make sure we never saw Daddy again." Ms. Moore looked at Elijah. He nodded once. Just once. But it was enough. Ms. Moore drove to the Caldwell house that Friday. Vivian opened the door with a warm smile that did not reach her eyes. Ms. Moore got straight to the point. "I am concerned about Elijah and Zoe." Elijah failed a test for the first time ever. They looked tired and frightened. "They are grieving," Vivian said smoothly. "What I am seeing goes beyond grief," Ms. Moore said. "These children are in my care," Vivian said slowly. "They are in their father's care," Ms. Moore said quietly. "You are temporary." That word landed hard. Vivian stood up. "We are done here." Ms. Moore stood too, shorter by several inches, but standing like she was the taller one. "I will be watching," she said simply. "Every single day." She walked out. That night Vivian stood in Zoe's doorway. "Your teacher came today," she said softly. "Somebody has been telling stories. Remember Zoe. Your daddy loves you both so much. It would break his heart if something happened to either of you. Good night, baby." The door clicked shut. Zoe lay in the dark, heart hammering. "Mama," she whispered. "Mama, please. We need you." The curtain by the window moved. There was no wind. Monday morning, Ms. Moore arrived at school an hour early. She set up a small table in her back room and put a basket on it. 2 sandwiches, 2 bottles of water, 2 apples, chips, and 2 chocolate bars, because Zoe had once said chocolate made hard things feel a little less hard. When the children arrived, she showed them the table. Every morning, before class. You come here first. Zoe looked at the basket, then at Ms. Moore. You did this for us. I did this for you, Ms. Moore said. Both of you. Zoe's eyes filled immediately. No tears before school. Eat first. Elijah sat down and unwrapped a sandwich. Took a bite. For the first time in weeks, he tasted something that felt like someone actually cared. It became their routine. Every morning. The basket always full. Hot soup on Wednesdays. Something special on Fridays. Peach cobbler one week that Elijah finished in 4 bites and looked up slightly embarrassed about. There's more, Ms. Moore said without looking up. He got more. Months passed. And one quiet evening Tobias came downstairs and found Vivian reading in the living room. The lamp on. The house settled around her. It made him feel less empty. And a lonely, grieving man will do things that a whole man never would. I think we should get married, he said. Vivian made her face show surprise. She was very good at that. Yes, she said softly. My answer is yes. She held his hands the way Renee used to hold them. And Tobias Caldwell made the worst decision of his entire life. The next morning, he told the children. Silence. Zoe stared at her father. Elijah stared at the table, hands flat and completely still. Elijah, say something. Elijah looked at his father, then at Vivian standing in the doorway calm and waiting. Yes, sir, he said quietly. 2 words. That was all. But behind his eyes a decision was settling into place. I am going to protect my sister, no matter what it costs me. The wedding was small, a courthouse ceremony. Zoe held Elijah's hand the entire time, so tight his fingers went numb. Bruno refused to get in the car that morning. He sat on the front porch and would not move for anyone. It started with a smell. Gardenia and shea butter. Renee's smell. Zoe noticed it first on a Tuesday night in December. Almost asleep when it drifted into her room. Soft and real and completely unmistakable. She sat up. The room was dark and empty, but the smell was there. Mama, she whispered. The curtain by the window moved slowly. There was no wind outside. Zoe lay back down. And even through all the fear and sadness, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Safe. Elijah heard it 3 nights later, humming his mother's song. The exact melody she hummed in the kitchen on Sunday mornings while the coffee brewed. He woke at 2 in the morning fully alert. Sat up. The humming stopped. His history book was open on the desk across the room. He had not left it open. He walked over. The book was open to 1 page. 1 word at the top. Justice. Mom, he said quietly into the dark. The room gave nothing back, but the air felt occupied, like someone standing just at the edge of where he could see. He slept better that night than he had in months. Bruno started sleeping outside Zoe's door every single night. Nothing could move him. Sometimes deep in the night, he would lift his head and stare at a spot in the dark hallway, his tail wagging slowly, like he could see someone standing there, like he recognized whoever it was. Vivian started feeling it too. The feeling of being watched in empty rooms. The bathroom mirror fogging in strange shapes. The 3rd step creaking at night when everyone was in bed. The creak of a step taking someone's weight. She told herself it was just the house settling. She was not convincing herself anymore. Then the dreams came. The first one was almost gentle. She was in the Caldwell kitchen when she turned and Renee was sitting at the table. Yellow robe, blue cup. Just looking at Vivian. Not with anger. With something worse than anger. With knowing. Vivian woke up gasping. She did not sleep again that night. The second dream was far worse. Renee stood at the foot of the bed. Same yellow robe. Same blue cup. But her eyes were the eyes of a woman who had seen everything and missed nothing. Vivian could not move. Could not speak. Renee opened her mouth, and what came out was Zoe's voice. "Mama, please. We need you." Over and over. Zoe's voice coming out of Renee's mouth. Vivian woke up screaming. Tobias grabbed her. "What happened?" "A dream," she managed. "Just a dream." He held her, and over his shoulder in the far dark corner of the room, she saw something she would spend 3 days trying to unsee. A shape, like heat rising off Summer Road, in the shape of a woman. There for 1 second, then gone. The blue cup appeared on the kitchen counter the next morning, in the exact spot Renee used to leave it every day. Vivian threw it in the outside trash and pushed it down deep. 2 mornings later it was back on the counter. Not cracked, not dirty. The crooked flowers. The letter M. She stopped throwing it away after that. Zoe talked to her mother every night now. Just talking. Like the wall between them was thin enough for her voice to travel through. "He is trying so hard, Mama. Elijah is only 15, and it is not fair." She wiped her face. "I know you are here. I can smell you. I know it is you." The lamp on her bedside table flickered. Once, twice, then stayed on steady and warm. "Okay, Mama," she whispered. "Okay." Outside her door, Bruno lifted his old head. His tail moved once slowly in the dark. Then he put his head back down and closed his eyes. In one dream, Vivian was back at Miss Della's table. But it was not Miss Della sitting across from her. It was Renee, the jar of dark liquid between them. Renee looked at the jar, then straight at Vivian. 3 words. "Tell the truth." Vivian woke at 3 in the morning shaking. The house was quiet, but not the quiet of an empty house. The quiet of a house that was waiting. "Stop it," she whispered. "Stop," she screamed. The lamp went out completely. Total darkness. And Vivian Foster sat pressed against the headboard shaking like the frightened, guilty woman she had always been. Downstairs, Bruno barked. Low, serious, pointed straight up at the ceiling. 3 times. Then silence. Vivian stopped sleeping. She lost weight fast. Her eyes went hollow. She was fading, and everyone could see it. "Are you sleeping okay?" Tobias asked one morning. "I am fine," she said, looking away. She drove out to Miss Della on a Thursday. Same dirt road. Same house. She sat in the car longer this time before she knocked. Miss Della opened the door. "I wondered when you would come back," she said. Inside, Vivian sat at the small table looking like a woman who had run out of road. "She will not leave me alone. She is everywhere. Make it stop, please." "I cannot make it stop," Miss Della said simply. "Then what do I do?" "You already know. If I tell him, he will." "You cannot carry this forever," Miss Della said. "And she will not let you. The dead are patient. They have nothing but time. And a mother protecting her children from the other side is the most patient thing there is." Vivian's chin shook. "I loved her," she said, voice breaking completely. "She was my sister. I truly loved her." "I know," Miss Della said. "Then how did I?" "Because love and poison can live in the same heart. And sometimes the poison takes over." Vivian put her face in her hands and wept. Not the careful tears from the funeral. Real tears. Ugly and deep and long overdue. When she was done, Miss Della placed a small sealed envelope on the table. "Everything is written in there. What you asked for. What I gave you. The date. Every detail. Take it. It belongs with the truth." Vivian picked it up and walked out without looking back. When investigators later drove out to that dirt road, Miss Della's house was completely empty. Like no one had lived there in years. She was never found. Some people know exactly when it is time to disappear. Vivian sat in the Caldwell driveway for 40 minutes looking at that house. That house that was never hers. That family that was never hers. That life she had destroyed to get to. And slowly everything she had built around her guilt came all the way down. Tobias was in the living room when she walked in. One look at her face, and he sat up straight. She stood in the middle of the room, coat still on. "I need to tell you something," she said, voice stripped of everything. "Please sit down." He sat. "Renee did not just get sick," she said. The room went completely still. "I put something in her coffee. I poisoned her, Tobias." The silence after those words was the heaviest that house had ever held. Tobias stood up slowly, turned away from her, walked to the window. Then it broke. The sound that came out of him had no name in any language. It was the sound of a man who had just understood everything. The woman he buried. The woman he held in that hospital room. The woman whose hands he pressed to his face while he made a promise. Taken on purpose. By the woman standing right behind him. "Get out," he said barely above a whisper. "Tobias, get out of my house." Upstairs, Elijah heard it. He opened his door. Zoe was already in the hallway, in her pajamas, eyes wide. They could hear their father's voice below. Not the words, just the sound of it. A sound they had never heard from him before. Elijah put his arm around his sister. Bruno pressed himself hard against Zoe's legs. And they waited. "You sat at her funeral," Tobias said, shaking. "You held my children while they cried. You held me while I fell apart. You came into her house. You married me." He turned and looked at her. "Why? Just tell me why." "Because I wanted what she had," Vivian said quietly. "I wanted you. I wanted this life. And I kept telling myself she did not deserve it as much as I did." "And my children," Tobias said very quietly. "What did you tell yourself about my children?" No answer. There was no answer for that. She held out the envelope. He took it without looking at her. "Elijah." "Zoe, come down please." They came down slowly. Tobias opened his arms. They went in immediately. No hesitation. He held them the way he should have held them all along. "I am so sorry," he said into their hair. "I should have seen it. I should have been here." "Dad," Elijah said. Tobias stopped. "It is okay," Elijah said quietly. It was not okay. All three of them knew that. But he said it anyway, because he was his father's son. And then, for the first time in a very long time, Elijah pressed his face into his father's shoulder and cried. Quietly. All the weight of everything he had carried alone for so long finally finding somewhere to go. Zoe held on tighter. Bruno pushed himself between all three of them, his tail moving slowly, like he had been waiting a very long time for this exact moment. "Leave," Tobias said quietly, looking up at Vivian. "And do not ever come back." She picked up her bag, walked to the door, stopped. "I am sorry," she said. The words had nowhere to land. She opened the door and walked out into the dark Georgia night. The envelope held everything. What Vivian asked Miss Della for, what she was given, the date, every single detail. With the letter and her own confession, she had no way out. She was arrested 14 days later. The trial lasted 11 days. She sat at the courtroom table every day, looking smaller than anyone remembered. On the final day, when the verdict was read, she did not look at Tobias or the children. She looked at her own hands, like she was still trying to understand how they had done what they had done. Guilty. First-degree murder. Life in prison. The courtroom erupted. Tobias sat in the front row with a child on each side. He did not cheer. He did not cry. He simply reached out and took both their hands at the same time. Elijah stared straight ahead. Zoe closed her eyes. And in that courtroom, the air shifted, like something that had been holding its breath for a very long time finally let it go. Tobias shut down his long-distance work. He came home every evening. He sat at the dinner table and listened, really listened, to everything. He learned that Elijah had wanted to be a lawyer since he was 12, but never said it because it felt too big. "It is not too big," Tobias told him. "It fits you perfectly." Something shifted in Elijah's eyes, like a door that had been stuck finally opening. He learned that Zoe had been writing songs in a notebook under her mattress, about her mother, about being afraid, about holding on when everything around you is falling apart. She showed him one evening on the couch. He read every word. When he finished, his eyes were wet. "Zoe, these are beautiful." She looked at him sideways, deciding whether to believe him. Then she smiled, wide and real and completely open. The first smile like that in over a year. It looked exactly like her mother's smile. He had to look away for just 1 second. Ms. Patricia Moore came on a Saturday morning with lasagna and sweet potato pie and homemade lemonade that Elijah had mentioned once 3 months before. She had remembered. Of course she had. Tobias opened the door and looked at this woman, who had seen what he missed, who had fed his hungry children without being asked, who had tried to tell him the truth and been brushed aside, who had kept showing up anyway. "I owe you an apology," he said. "A real one. You were trying to hold your family together," she said. "You just could not see what was pulling it apart." He stepped back and let her in. The children heard her voice and came running. Even Elijah ran. He would deny it later. She held them both at once, eyes closed, head slightly bowed, like a woman thanking God for the weight in her arms. Bruno ran joyful circles around all 3 of them until Elijah grabbed him, laughing out loud. A real laugh from somewhere real inside him. That evening, after Ms. Moore left and the children were upstairs, Tobias sat alone in the kitchen, the good kind of quiet around him. He thought about Renee, her yellow robe, her blue cup, her morning prayer at the window, the way she held his face in that hospital room. "Take care of my babies." He put his face in his hands. "I failed you," he said. "I am so sorry." Then the smell came. Gardenia and shea butter, soft and warm and completely real. He lifted his head. The kitchen was empty, but the smell was there, close and full, like someone sitting right beside him. He looked at the empty chair next to his. "Renee," he whispered. The kitchen light flickered once, gentle, warm, like a woman saying, without any words at all, "I hear you. I see you. I forgave you long before you ever asked." He wept until he had nothing left. Then he sat in the quiet and let the smell of gardenias wrap around him, like arms, like the arms of a woman in an old yellow robe who had loved her family so completely that not even death could make her walk away. 3 years later, Elijah stood at his graduation. He unfolded his speech, then folded it back up and spoke from the only place that mattered. He talked about his mother, about how love does not leave when the person does, how it becomes a light you can find your way back to even when every room around you is dark. He talked about a teacher who filled a basket every morning and never made the children who needed it feel small for needing it. Ms. Moore pressed her hand over her mouth in the 3rd row. He talked about his father, about what it looks like when a man realizes he got things badly wrong and chooses every day after that to be better. Tobias did not take his eyes off his son once. He talked about his sister, about how the strongest people are not the ones who were never hurt. They are the ones who kept going anyway, who kept singing even when the song felt impossible. Zoe was beside her father, laughing and crying at the same time. Then Elijah looked out at everyone and said the last thing. "My mother used to stand at the kitchen window every morning and say thank you for all of it. I did not understand that when I was young. I understand it now. Whatever room you are sitting in today, whatever you are carrying, say thank you. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are still here. And still here means there is still time to make things right." He was quiet for a moment. "Thank you," he said. He meant every person in that room. And he meant most of all the one person who was not there. The one he had learned was never truly far away. That night the family sat on the porch. Tobias, Elijah, Zoe, and Bruno, stretched out slowly at their feet. Very old now, but still there, still right where he needed to be. The Georgia night was warm and soft. Fireflies blinked in the yard. Stars filled the sky. Nobody talked for a while. They just sat together and let that be enough. "Do you think she saw it?" Zoe asked quietly. "The speech?" "Yes," Elijah said. No pause. "Me too," Zoe said softly. Tobias said nothing. He just looked out at the fireflies in the dark and smiled. Because right at that moment the smell of gardenias drifted slowly across that porch. Soft and warm and unhurried. Like a woman in an old yellow robe standing just at the edge of where the light ends. Still watching over them. Still right there. Still loving them from the only place she had left. Bruno lifted his old head slowly. One ear went up. His tail moved once. Gently. In the warm dark. Then he put his head back down, and his tail went still. Bruno had waited a long time for this, for the family to be whole again, for peace to come back to that house on Sycamore Lane. Now it was here. He closed his eyes and let himself finally rest. If this story moved something in you, if you felt Renee's love, Elijah's strength, Zoe's pain, Bruno's loyalty, or the warmth of Ms. Moore, drop a comment below right now and tell me which moment broke you the most. This is Echoes of Desire, where every story is felt, not just read. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you are not yet part of this family, hit that subscribe button. You already know you belong here. For every mother who loved so deeply that not even death could make her stop. And for every child who whispered into the dark and felt something whisper back.